Hello, I'm Ollie and this is CriminOlly, where I talk about crime, pulp, horror, that kind of thing. Today, disappointing modern horror and a new Stephen King book which was neither disappointing nor horror. It's my weekly wrap-up. So somehow I finished 8 books this week, which does seem a little bit ridiculous. I did have some time off work, so it was a long weekend here in the UK last weekend. So I had the Monday off work anyway, and then I ended up having the Tuesday and Wednesday off as well. The Tuesday I had deliberately booked off work because the new Stephen King book, Never Flinch, came out. And I really wanted to read it and try and get a review up as quickly as possible. And I managed to finish it in the day. So I started it about 6 o'clock on the Tuesday morning, finished it just after lunch, about kind of 2:30, 3 o'clock, filmed my review and got that up that day. So I was quite pleased with that, albeit it did change my normal schedule for the week, which is probably something that only I care about. But normally my review videos go up on Thursday. Last week it went up on Tuesday instead. Anyway, that's enough waffle for me. Let me talk to you about the books I read. So yeah, a mix of different stuff. A lot of horror this week because it's the last week of Horror Mayhem. I've really enjoyed Horror Mayhem. I'll talk more about it when I do my May wrap-up video, but it's been a really fun month for me, reading quite a range of different styles of horror across different decades. So getting towards the end of that, you may remember I was trying to read a horror like short story collection or short novel from each of the last 10 decades. So I managed to finish that off. So let me start with the first of those then. So that was this one, Scar City by Joel Lane, which came out, when did it come out? 2010s, I think. Yeah, 2016 it came out originally. So a short story collection. I read another Joel Lane book, The Earthwire, earlier this month, which I really enjoyed. I think I enjoyed this one even more. So this was his last book. In fact, it was only published after he died. And there's a very poignant foreword to the book where it talks about the fact that the person who was like the editor at the publisher realised on hearing that Joel Lane had died that he still had in his drafts on his email an email accepting the book for publication, which he hadn't got around to sending. So I thought that was quite poignant and shows how like tragic Joel Lane's death was. He died when he was only 50, like very, very suddenly. So yeah, anyway, a really, really good collection. Slightly less weird than The Earthwire. The Earthwire, the overwhelming feeling I got from that book was kind of weirdness and dreamlikeness. This felt a bit less weird than that. And indeed, some of the stories felt almost like crime stories rather than horror stories. They definitely had crime elements to them. But yeah, a really excellent collection. I definitely am going to work my way through Joel Lane's back catalogue and read some more stuff by him. I'm really very, very impressed with this. Yeah, creepy, weird, but with that overwhelming sense of kind of decay, I guess, like urban decay that The Earthwire had as well. Yeah, really interesting stuff. After that then, one of the disappointing horror books I read this week. So this was The Eyes Are the Best Part by Monika Kim. So a book that came out, I think, last year. Lots of people seem to really, really like this book. It left me completely cold. I couldn't really... It's one of those books that I just couldn't really grasp what it was supposed to be about. So the plot is about this young woman who's Korean American. Her mother tells her the eyes are the best part, like right at the start of the book. They are eating fish as a family, and the mum enjoys eating the fish eyes and says that they're the best part of the fish. So this young woman goes off the rails basically and starts killing people and eating their eyes. That's basically the book. There was some interesting stuff about like Korean American identity. There was a particularly horrible male character who you're wishing all the way through that he'll get his comeuppance. But overall, it just didn't work for me. I just couldn't really grasp what it was trying to be as a book and didn't particularly enjoy it as a result. After that, another one for Horror Mayhem. So this was another one, and I guess The Eyes are the Best Part. While I didn't deliberately read it for Horror Mayhem, I read it as a buddy read with MJ from the channel Reading This Life. MJ enjoyed it a lot more, and she has put a video review up for it, which I will link to in the description to this video. yeah, so I didn't deliberately read it for Horror Mayhem, but clearly it would work for Horror Mayhem. So here we have one I did read for Horror Mayhem. So this is a 2020s pick. So this came out in 2023. So this is A Theory of Haunting by Sarah Monette. So this is one of her series, one of her books that is in the Carl Murchison Booth series. So about this kind of occult detective type character called Carl Murchison Booth. I read another book by her, which I think was called The Bone Key, a while ago, which was a short story collection of stories about him. Just a fun, slightly cosy horror read. So it's got like a Victorian country house style setting, and just an enjoyable, slightly creepy ghost story. So only short, just a novella. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. Carl Murchison Booth is a really interesting central character, and this had some fun, creepy stuff in it. Plus that, just a nice kind of Victorian atmosphere to it. So enjoyed that a lot. One I didn't enjoy quite as much, although it wasn't dreadful. I enjoyed it more than The Eyes Are the Best Part, was another fairly new one. So this is Burn the Negative by Josh Winning. So this is a cursed movie kind of a book. So it's about a horror film that was made in the 90s where various people who were involved in the making of the film have subsequently died. And they've died in similar ways to the way people in the film die. It's like 30 years later, and this young woman who's like a journalist, like a film journalist, goes to is sent to LA to report on a new TV series, which is like a reboot of that film. And it turns out, and this isn't really a spoiler because it becomes apparent very early on in the book, that as a child actress, she was in that original film. And creepy stuff starts happening again, predictably enough. So this was, I've read another book by Josh Winning. I read his book, what's it called? I forgot what it's called. I want to say it was called The Dark Glass, but it wasn't. It was called something like that, which was about a kind of Jim Henson style, like animatronic movie where there's a crossover between reality and the world of the movie. I really, really enjoyed that one. This similarly, so Josh Winning is a movie journalist himself, so he's definitely got kind of insight into the movie biz, and that side of it was quite interestingly done, but I didn't feel it worked perfectly as a horror novel. It was still fun, but it was like if it was a horror movie, it would be the kind of movie that you chanced across on Netflix and you watched it and it was diverting and entertaining for an hour and a half, but kind of quite forgettable. So yeah, enjoyable enough while I was reading it, but I wouldn't necessarily recommend it. I think there are better cursed movie books out there, and indeed I may have a video coming up very soon about cursed movie books rather. So yes, that one not a huge hit for me. So moving on to the Stephen King book then, Never Flinch, so the new Holly Gibney book. And as I said in the intro, this is not a horror book. It's definitely more of a crime thriller than a horror book. There's no kind of supernatural elements to it at all, really. Unlike the previous books in the Holly Gibney series, so the previous ones have all had something that you could kind of identifiably say was horror, albeit the one just before this, Holly, didn't really have supernatural stuff, but definitely had kind of some really nasty horror type stuff in. This one, Never Flinch, much more of a crime thriller. I really enjoyed it. It's a fun read. It's not brilliant, it's not perfect, but it's really entertaining. So Holly Gibney is a private detective, and in this one she ends up investigating or getting involved in two different plots. One is about a series of murders that appear to be linked to somebody who was sent to prison for a crime he didn't commit. And the other one is about a feminist who's doing like a speaking tour across America, and he's getting targeted by anti-abortion activists. So just a nice mix of different things going on in the book. The characters are really, really good. You get to revisit some of the characters from previous Holly Gibney books and kind of catch up with them. And it was really tense as well, particularly the final quarter or so was really, really gripping. So yeah, I enjoyed that one. After that then, a book I've been listening to the audiobook of throughout the month, and that's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin. So I finished this. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was a really, really wonderful book. So about a friendship between two people who meet as kids, and continue to be friends as adults who end up making video games together. So loads of stuff about like the video game industry and how video games are made, which I personally found really interesting as someone who used to be a gamer. But just mostly just a book about friendship, and just really, really beautifully done. Written in a slightly strange way. There was something about the prose style that I found slightly odd at times, not in a distracting way, just in a notable way, I guess. But yeah, just a wonderful, wonderful book. So many people have recommended it to me, and I'm going to recommend it to all of you now as well. If you haven't read it and you want a book that's a bit of a pick-me-up, really, then read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. I thought it was fantastic. After that, then, the other disappointing new horror book I read this week, and again, lots of people seem to really, really like this book and this author, but for me, I'm afraid it just didn't really work. It's Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison. So this is a book about a young woman who's moved away from home to the big city. Things don't work out for her there, so she goes back, and she comes from a small town, which is basically like there's a religious cult there. I'm not going to say more than that because that would spoil things a little bit. But when she goes back, you discover things about this cult, and things get very, 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 very weird indeed. It's definitely more of a kind of black comedy than a horror novel, although you could definitely say it's a horror novel as well. But for me, it just didn't work. I just didn't really jibe with the story. I just didn't get on with it, I'm afraid. So I did finish it. There were some amusing parts at times. At the beginning, I was finding the central character quite interesting, but the further it got into the concept that it was exploring, the less I enjoyed it, I'm afraid. So yeah, that was a miss for me. And then finally, another short story collection. So this felt like an appropriate way to finish Horror Mayhem. So as I said earlier, the theme was Decades of Dread. So reading books across various decades. And whilst this collection came out in the 2010s, it has stories from the 80s, 90s, the 2000s and the 2010s. So 4 different decades represented. A really, really good collection. So this is The Humanity of Monsters, edited by Michael Matheson. I really, really enjoyed this. Not all the stories were massive hits for me, but all of them, or the vast majority of them, were decent, and there were some really great ones as well. So really nice mix of different authors, some of whom I'd read before, some of whom I'd never heard of, some of whom I'd heard of and been meaning to try. And so it was a good way, as anthologies like this often are, of trying a bunch of different authors. So the standout stories for me were 3 of them, I think. So the first of those was The Things by Peter Watts. Now, Peter Watts, I'm pretty sure, is the guy who wrote a book called Blindsighted, which loads of people have recommended, which I do have a copy of. I'm definitely going to read it now because I loved his story, The Thing. So this is like a retelling of the movie The Thing, but from the perspective of the alien. And it kind of turns on its head the whole concept of The Thing, but in a way that works with the movie. It doesn't feel like it's like trying to retcon the movie or anything like that. It just works. It's really, really clever. I enjoyed it enormously. The other one I really liked was, or the other 2 I really liked was, so the first was The Emperor's Old Bones by Gemma Files, which was a really creepy, disturbing story about this. I don't know even how to describe it. About this young boy I think it's in Shanghai during the Second World War, who his family die, and he gets taken by this woman, and it's about their relationship over the decades after that. Really, really excellently done. Packs a huge amount into a short story. Really excellent. And then the other one that was great was Night They Missed the Horror Show by Joel Lansdale, which was a really disturbing short story that again felt like it packed absolutely loads into a fairly few pages. About set as a lot of Joel Lansdale's stuff is in Texas, about these 2 guys who are really, really awful, and some really awful stuff happens to them. So yeah, just a very nicely formed story that felt like just completely complete, if you'll pardon the phrase, in and of itself. I really, really enjoyed it. But yeah, overall, a really, really good collection. So that's what I have read this week. Got through quite a lot. As it's the final day of May, I'm not going to start something else for May. I'm at that delicious point, which I always really enjoy, when I've just finished a book and I get to pick what I'm going to read next. So I'm going to pick something from my June TBR to start today, probably a Western. I think I might pick one of the kind of little paperback Westerns I had that kind of weren't officially in my TBR, but were there. I fancy something kind of light and entertaining, so I might read like a gunsmith book or something like that. Anyway, that's enough about what I've been reading. In terms of channel stuff then, so in the last week you've had my June TBR, where I talk about the stuff I'm going to read for June on the range, and also some extreme horror books I'm going to be reading this or next month. You've had my review, as I said, of Never Flinch, and you've had a video talking about hype in and around the publishing industry, particularly talking about that list of made-up books that the Chicago Sun-Times accidentally published. In the week ahead then, so you're going to get my wrap-up for May, which I'm probably going to film at some point this weekend, so that will go up next week. You're going to get a review of The Dancing Men by Duncan Carl, which is one of the books I've read in my Buddy Reading with My Dad project. And you're going to get as I said earlier, a video about cursed movie books. So both some thoughts from me on that particular subgenre and why I enjoy it so much, and also 10 really good cursed movie books that I've really enjoyed over the years. So that's me done for the day, or for today rather. Hope you've had a good reading week. Let me know what you've been reading in the comments. And as always, thanks very much for watching. Hope you're safe and well out there. Hope you're reading good stuff. And I'll speak to you again very soon. Cheerio.